It's a big honor for me to have Kathryn Mikesell here from Fountainhead, talking to us a little bit about the Miami Corona project, that conversations talking about how the pandemic is affecting us artists and affecting our community. Kathryn, how you doing? How are you?
I'm good. I have to say that the honor is mine. I think you know that I've loved, admired, and valued having you in my life from the first time that we met. And I love that you're doing these conversations, and it truly is an honor that you asked me to be a part of it. So thank you very much.
Well, you've been with me at every step of the way. As you know, I'm at the University of Miami now, but as you know, you served on my advisory board back. Remember the name of that board? ETSCA.
I know, it's like the weirdest that we were all like, we need a different name. It was way too long, and the abbreviation wasn't easy to say either.
Yeah, it was the oh my God, if I can remember the engaged teaching. Engaged scholarship teaching. Oh my God! See, that's the problem.
You can't see. That's the problem. Even you don't remember it. So now I don't feel bad.
we called it the Office of Engaged Creativity, which is a cool. And I remember you helping us out with that and moving it. And I also know, and our entire community is impressed by your generosity of spirit and by the creativity you bring to our cultural sector. And you do that literally starting, with your house where you had, I think still do, had resident artists come in and create, great residencies there. We see it in your life. Your life is infused with art. You see it in your son, who was the youngest art collector and a damn awesome one. And we especially see it with the work that you do with the residencies in Little River, creating a place in that time, for years now, where artists, studios are being encroached upon by development. You create these spaces for artists to create and to think. And at this moment, I want to have a little conversation with you about Fountainhead, about artists, about the role of art, the role of curators, the role of community, and that. But before I go there, let me just talk about you for a second. How are you doing with this pandemic? Is everything cool? How are you reacting? How's your life changed with it? How are you?
Oh my gosh, that's like, I feel like that's such a hard question to answer, because I would have answered it differently like 5 minutes ago, right? So, I mean, to be very honest and vulnerable, I will say that I've been on an emotional roller coaster. I mean, I love helping people. I love connecting people, and there are times when I just feel completely empowered and ready and like so excited to create change and to have learned so much from this. And then other times I feel like this crushing weight, like I can't do enough. I can't solve this. I can't help everyone. Like, and that to me is it's very hard. So I have to work at it to not let my head go there, because I'll be honest, my head can be very mean to me. And I'm lucky that I'm a very positive person. So I have tools that I use, meditation and things like that, or just walking outside or going for a walk. But I think my greatest tool for when I get to those moments is I text people that I admire and I appreciate, and I just randomly text them and say, this is why I love you.
Yeah.
And that will bring me out of it.
Yeah, times like these, I think moments like that matter. It actually reminds me a little bit of a little anecdote, taking you back to Hurricane Andrew in '92. And 92 for me was a big year. As you know, the hurricane came and destroyed South Florida, and it gave everyone a moment to just rethink things. And I was younger then, 92, I was 28, I guess, or something. Yeah, I was 28 in 92. And I was a research assistant professor at the medical school at the University of Miami, working on juvenile justice and community engagement issues, working something called multi-systemic family therapy. And I remember it's basically looking at a community and also looking at a family from different angles. So it's family therapy, it's working community, it's just a bunch of different ways of addressing the issue of problem solving. So the problem isn't the kid, the problem is the environment that the kid is in. So we don't just make the kid the problem. We look at all the systems that impact on that kid's behavior. And we were doing that. And, you know, this is Little Havana. I was doing a lot of community organizing and work there. And boom, August 24th, this crazy Category 5 hurricane lands. And all of a sudden, all of us, I was the only lawyer in the office, everyone else is, you know, psychologists, psychiatrists, are going down to Homestead, and we're literally working with migrant workers whose, you know, trailers and houses look like licorice. You know, they just rumble like there's just tons of rubble, and I saw that within the little spaces that they could control, they would try to bring order.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed futile in this chaos. It's chaos. Like, you know, there's no roadmaps, there's no trees, there's nothing. It's just chaos. You're still trying to create structure. And I mean, some structure was really valid. Like, we were under tents, organizing community meetings. How are we getting the water out? How are we going to rebuild? But also the acts of just trying to control a little space so that you could have control over something in a world where there is no control. And maybe that's what's happening with this conversation. In a world where I cannot control this virus, in a world where you can't control your impact, just trying to have these small spaces where you can have some impact is the way we cope. Maybe that's what's happening with us here right now, you know?
I think you're right. You know, I mean, if this has shown us anything, it's that, you know, and I'm a planner. Like I'm a planner. I'm a list writer. Like, I have an agenda for the day. I have things I'm going to accomplish, and, you know, and that's impossible now. Like, there is no, I don't, you know, planning for the residency and stuff. Like, I don't know. I just call, like, how are you feeling? Are you thinking you might be, you know, when will you be ready to hop on a plane? Talking to people that, you know, come to openings, like, what would you feel comfortable doing at this time? And yeah, it's like, you can't, yes, there's very little that you can control. So it's a matter of where can you find those little windows where you can have, you know, immediate impact, and know that you're giving back in some way, like baby steps. Because, you know, right now we just have to focus on what's in front of us. We all need an end game, obviously, but it's about the continual move forward. We have to keep moving forward. And it's okay to pause, and it's okay to take a couple steps back when you realize the path is not going, you know, in the way in which you want it. But you just have to keep.
And I, you know, I kind of want to talk a little bit about that as an artistic community, because I think, you know, look, I'm glad that you're, you know, like, we're talking here about our vulnerabilities and what we're feeling. I mean, aside from us trying to do whatever we do within our sectors, within our, you know, projects, we're also human beings that are being impacted emotionally by the uncertainty and by the horror of what's happening. Like, over 900, yesterday we passed a 900 threshold. There's 900 people who weren't supposed to die. They got infected and they died alone without their families. There's at least 900 families, but there's also, you know, multiple families to each individual, and workspaces, and all that just tragically ended like that. And we're not immune. Like, we feel this, we understand this pain, and we try to, like, do what that person was after the hurricane, grooming and sweeping a little corner of chaos, just so that we feel a sense of control. But we have to be open to the fact that we don't know if we're entering a mass depression, you know, economically. We don't know if hundreds of thousands of more, because we've already passed the 100,000 mark, Americans are going to die. We already have 100,000 cases alone in Florida. So we're in this weird space, so that we're trying to take care of others, but we also need to understand that we too are part of this ecosystem, and we're impacted too. And I think that's probably why you're, you know, just to open our conversation, 1 minute you're there, and the other minute you're back. And for me, I'm sitting here as an artist trying to capture this moment, trying to understand. And I always start every interview not talking about the residency you lead or the city you manage or the science experiment you run, but you the individual. How are you? How is your life being impacted? Because I think we need to understand that we're part of the ecosystem too, right?
Yeah, and I'd say that, you know, they're you know, the one thing that I have found so inspiring, you know, it helps elevate me is the conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
And the openness of people, and the vulnerability of people, and the rawness of people, sharing in ways that they just didn't share before. Like, I feel like it's humanized us, like, all, like, I don't know, that might not be the right word, but it's just, it's
made us pause enough to look at each other and feel each, you know, like
as just human beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Human beings that have different ideas and different backgrounds and different ways of living. But at the end of the day, we're all like people. We truly are in this together. Like, I'm a very, you know, spiritual person, in that I really believe that we are all connected.
Absolutely.
I mean, I believe
that's my
that.
worldview. That's my worldview.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is why we feel these things when we're not, you know, we're not sick, and maybe we don't even have a family member that's sick, but, you know, there's a connect. We're all connected. Like, we all feel that.
Right. I think
and that's such a gift. Like, imagine if we didn't. Like, that would be awful.
Well, what parts of my exploration have been is that there are some who really don't, and greed still rules in some spaces, and
I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, and the vulnerability that has been exposed to certain groups, artists included, that wasn't there before. You know, that sort of this heightened awareness that we now have. And I kind of want to just take us there a little bit. You know, as a cultural leader, you know, someone who's you know, life purpose, the project is to support the arts and support artists. I'm just wondering, you know, what just give us it's just an observation from your, you know, your vantage point. What have you seen? The artists, you know, the community that you serve, your residency, like how has this pandemic, how has, you know, mid-March till today, transformed things for you and for them?
Well, I think there's so much happening, right? I mean, I think that, you know, we realized we've always been very vulnerable in the arts. We've known that, you know, from the beginning. You know, it's the first thing to be cut, you know. But I want to say something very positive, in that if people don't realize the value of artists now, I mean, no, because that was a negative way of saying it. People are, if they didn't understand the value of artists previously, they do now, because it is the arts, whether it's been through the visual arts, through music, through dance, that the artists are what have brought us all through this. I mean, I haven't talked to anyone, and I'm talking about people outside of the arts sector. Like,
right.
I mean, those of us in the arts sector, we know, but the people outside of the arts sector, everybody is leaning on the arts, whether it's, you know, watching something via Zoom or Instagram, or it's actually picking up a paintbrush or picking up a guitar. Like, it's the arts that are getting us through this, and it's the artists behind that and the people that are leading us, that, you know, I think are finally getting some of the well-deserved recognition, right? And I hope that we can continue on that path. So when I look at,
I have a neighbor just here on this block who's elderly and, you know, isn't going to be going out much, but on social media I've been seeing that the paintings she's created. I mean, she's painted before, but not like this, right? Not like this. So you're right that there is this. Even at that personal level, at that sort of therapeutic level, there is this value to our universal language, the thing that made us a human species, the arts, to this, but also whether it's a graduation that's done on digitally or whatever, everything. Like I do see art infused in every aspect of it. What do you think the role, in such a broad question, but just what is the role of an artist during a pandemic? What value does an artist's perspective, way of thinking, bring to a place like this where there's so much uncertainty and maybe even fear? What does an artist do in this moment?
Well, to quote Gerhard Richter, like art is the highest form of hope, and it absolutely positively is. But art, I think, is doing the same thing during this time that it always has, right? It it brings us hope, it brings us joy, it points out the social injustices in the world, it causes us to pause and to think, it causes us to view the world around us differently, to see into different communities in ways that we can't otherwise. Like I feel like artists are this incredible lens to the world that it's a gift to be able to look through that lens, right? So I think artists have just been doing what they've always done for us, right? And I think just maybe more people are listening, are taking the time to see that.
And what changes for artists, the artists that you work with? I mean, there's been some change clearly, even access to a studio space or access to clients. All you have to do is to go to my April calendar of events, and you can see postpone, cancel, postpone, cancel. Right,
yeah. In many, in a lot of ways, it's been devastating, right?
Right.
Artists that have worked, 2 years for a solo show, and they put everything they have into that to produce their best work. And not only, you have obviously the impacts are huge, financial, but also like the emotional, like you worked so hard to put this together, and that emotional side of things is really important. You made that work to share.
And what society lost by not being able to experience that at that point. Just like a kid who can't be in school, and now they've lost the ability to learn something like that. Those deficits are ones that I think sometimes go unnoticed, right? Because you didn't see them not happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right, and they're the ones that can have long-term effects on your psyche, on your well-being, your mental well-being. So I guess one of the things that I will say is that we've had artists with us at the residency the entire time through this. Our studios, we never closed our studios because we don't have common areas. And when you said, is it essential? 100% an artist studio is essential to them, right? And they could come in without even touching a doorknob, actually, the way our keys work, and only touch their own door. So the studios remained open. And at the residency, I'm very happy with some of the things that we've been doing and what we're doing actually this month, which is, so we, for the first time, have brought Miami-based artists into the residency, because the residency is typically for national and international artists, but obviously people are not flying at this time. And nor, even if they could fly, would they be comfortable living with two people they don't know? Probably not, So we have 3 local artists, and we're actually doing a program, and they're all involved, but primarily with Giovanna Gonzalez through her project, supplemental projects. And Misael Soto, who has a project called the Department of Reflection.
Love that.
And I know, I am like a little kid when it comes to spending time with Gio and Misa and Naja. I find them so inspiring and so insightful and so thoughtful and thought-provoking. Like being able, I wish that we could have all of the events that we normally have around them, because I think they're all brilliant. But what we're doing is we're hosting very small dinners with artists to hear about what artists need. Because as I started to talk with artists, everyone's very, very appreciative of all of the programs that are out there to help them. But they said, nobody's really asking us what we need and what's most important to us. So we said, well, we need to change that. We need to listen to the artists about what they need before we create, not before we create programs, but as we're looking to create new programs, as we're looking to the future, what is it that artists need? So
the issue was emergency. It's like, how do we get funding so you can pay your rent?
Yeah, that was the most important thing.
How do you get money from the federal government? How do you distribute it?
Right.
Clearly, artists are independent. They're not nonprofits. They're not, so how does that work itself out? And look, I wish there was more that there more needs to be done. There's these minuscule amounts of dollars that come in, and sure, that gets you through a month. But you're right. Like now, it's a new day. It's a new day for museums, for cultural institutions, for artists, for practices. So yeah, having these conversations. I'm still at the place where I'm about the Zoom thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're doing some of those too. Don't worry, we have a fair number of those going on. But I mean, most of the people have been quarantined to remain quarantined. So yeah. So, and we have a really big table. So we're sitting apart and everything. We're being very safe and very, very careful.
Those conversations reveal. What are you hearing? What are artists telling you?
So I'll be respectful of the fact that they want to put everything together, but it's really about a lot of the conversations is around how do we collectively have a voice and visibility as artists within the community, because there isn't really one voice coming forward. So how do you create that one voice? How do you create a way of sharing such that not everybody's trying to figure everything out on their own, and that you get outside of just your friends circles when it comes to sharing of information, whether it's about grants that are available. Honorariums is a big conversation right now. Is how are artists being compensated for the gifts that they give to our community? Talking about how vulnerable they really have been. So how do you create more sorry, Dan's talking.
I love the fact that you're home.
Yeah, there's all these. Yeah, I'm home.
No, we're capturing a moment. Like this is the moment. This is what COVID-19 feels like in Miami on mid-June. The end of June. This is literally our moment. We're sequestered in our homes. We're talking on Zoom because I can't be having a latte with you somewhere. We're here.
Right.
And now my husband's gonna walk through that door and saying,
right, exactly.
Hey, the cart arrived. The frozen food is melting. Let's go.
Right. So true. I'm like, my children are older, but they still do walk through sometimes, But yeah. So how do you create a system that isn't so vulnerable in situations like this? How do you protect your income? How do you protect your jobs? How do you create other opportunities to make a living? We talk a lot about sustainability. It's one of my least favorite words because I don't want people to sustain themselves. I want them to thrive. I want, you know, I want them to excel. And so that there's a lot of conversations around that. There's conversations on how the institutions and nonprofits can better serve them, which is who we're, you know, in my case, that's who I'm serving, as artists. Like, how can we better serve the artists? Obviously, there's a lot of discussion around inclusivity, not only for artists, but for communities within those institutions. And how do you get away from just talking about being inclusive and actually creating an environment that is welcoming to include more people. So that's, yeah, and there's a lot of talk around education, you know, you're at U of M, but what sort of programs can we implement that are, you know, similar to, like, whether it's an MFA or some sort of fellowship to provide further educational opportunities for artists. I feel like that those are very limited here in Miami. But the conversations, I can tell you that the majority of them have started at 6. And like last night, I came home at 12:30 because I was just utterly exhausted. And they've been going to like 11, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And it's like, there's so much to talk about. And there's so many different, there's so many different needs, because being an artist, being a successful artist means different things to different artists. There's not a one size fits all for artists, right? To some, it's a commercial side of things. It's selling work. To others, it's getting grants to be able to do community focused projects. Others, it's working with scientists, you know, for climate change and sea level rise initiatives. So, you know, it's also trying to understand what different communities within the artist community.
Right. Yeah. When you said one voice, that's such a hard thing when you're talking about the arts, because it's not just the visual artist, but it's all the other art forms. And within that, the different priorities or life purposes each of the artists have, whether it's to be relevant, to have voice, to give voice, to help us better understand. And it's all one. I mean, it all comes from that same tree. But it's I just think that moments like this, the moment that makes you pause and reflect and text your friend, and 1 minute you're like, I'm going to champion this, and the other minute is like, oh my, there's so much to do, is an exploration that everyone is having, not just the cultural sector, but everyone. You know, how we deal with people in prison. How's that moving forward? How do we deal with the courts? What happens to education? What happens to the business sector? Do we work from home moving forward? So these are all things, but more importantly, I think, and here's where I hope that my fellow artists help us see around corners, as we say, right? Is that there's an imagined future. There's a different place. There's a different way of doing things. And I think this moment in time has exposed some things that maybe weren't so obvious to others. Some of us have been seeing them for a long time, but now everyone sees. So what does this new world that doesn't have all the vulnerabilities, all the lack of preparedness for things like, you know, people who can't Instacart, people who don't have health insurance, people that don't, you know, that didn't understand how interconnected we are, that if someone in Hialeah is sick, then that means Morningside has to worry too, because it's one pandemic, one community, we're all in this together, right? So that new awareness, and when you layer upon that Black Lives Matter and the newfound openness that our country has to the need to have equal justice under law, and you layer upon that the Miami situation with climate crisis, I believe that place, this moment, is a place for artists here in this community to continue reflecting, continue in their conversations, but find new ways of exploring how we lead our community to reframe the way they see, so that our behavior changes. And I think that is the gift of hope, right? That is the ability for an artist to take you to that place. And I just personally wanted to thank you, because pandemic or no pandemic, you know, art fair or no art fair, you know, you have been helping engage artists and support artists, advancing artists who try to do this with their work. David Rowan, one of your artists, you know, one of my favorite in your team. I mean, there's a whole bunch. An entire team of artists are great, but what you do in supporting the work of artists in this community is something that, as you said, now more than ever. I mean, we've always been doing it, but now more than ever, I think everyone sees. And there's very few cultural entrepreneurs like you in this community, and we need more like you. And I just wanted to take this moment with the Miami Corona Project conversation to capture your story, what you're doing, where we are, so that we could share that with others and help them see. Is there something you want to end with or say? Maybe to the artists that you don't know, right? The artists that aren't, you know, you're not aware of, but artists that need to hear from someone who's widely recognized as such a philanthropist, someone who cares so much about our cultural sector. Something that they may want to hear at this moment when they don't know if they can continue their practice because they may need to find something else to do that pays the bills. Like, is there a message of hope from you to them?
I mean, well, the most important thing I can say is that being an artist is one of the most valuable roles you can play. And I also consider artists some of the bravest people I know, because there's no other profession that I know where people take everything within themselves and put it out there for everyone to see, to hear, to comment on, and like, just thank you, and know that there are many, many of us out there that need you, that value you. And, you know, like, I'll take a phone call if somebody like needs me. Like, I will be happy to be your cheerleader. And there are many people out there like me that know how important a role you play. And I will continue to work tirelessly to make sure to help other people see that. And to, you know, when you talked about, you know, the artists, you know, helping us see around the corner, we also have to make sure it's also upon us as the community to make sure that there are ways for artists to do that, whether it's through funding, you know, I mean, funding's a main reason, right? Or fellowships or connections to make those things happen. But that's on us. That's what we have to do, is we have to work together to be creative, to help artists do what they do. You know, so I promise to keep working on that.
And take time to take care of yourself, and like me, to have moments of despair that are tempered with the truth that we're going to get through this, and we're all in this, and we're all here for each other. But it's okay to also have a moment of, oh my God.
Yeah, if you're not, then you're not thinking about it enough. And I do want to say that I do have to give it a shout out to my family, because I realize I'm in a very privileged position to say this, but you know, my son is headed off to college. He stayed home and went to Dade for the first year, but he's headed up to Tallahassee, and my daughter is in her, you know, senior year of high school. So they're going to be leaving soon. So the fact that I got to eat every meal with them, and Dan and I got to play games with them, and Dan and I got to have conversations that, you know, we've been wanting to have for years. So I just had, you know, the time with my family has just been, you know, priceless. And like I said, I realize I'm in a privileged position, but that time and that feeling is what gives me even more power and energy to keep pushing forward to make a difference.
Absolutely. Taking care of yourself so that you can then share that and care for others. Absolutely. That's essential. And I think that's what I'm trying to communicate to the artists by giving them that sense of hope, right? That we are at this moment, and right now it's let's take care of you And then
Absolutely.
let's help. And that's what you said, that's what you do. Literally, that's what your organization does, is to provide and advance what artists do. So again, thank you. Stay safe and healthy.
Yeah.
And let's continue working together. We'll have better acronyms. but we're
That's the acronym for the next one, please.
As cultural leaders in this community, let's continue working, because it's going to take a minute for us to find a new path through the economy and through how we get to socialize again with one another. So
it's gonna take me. I think Jermaine Barnes was at our dinner last night, and he said, I'm more excited to see where we are a year from now, right? Like, let's make sure this isn't just talk. Yeah. Let's actually accomplish something. So
yeah, he's a colleague at architecture here at the School of Architecture. He's really wonderful.
Yeah, he's wonderful. But it's true. Like, let's our memories can be short. Let's not let that happen. Let's keep these conversations going. Let's keep making changes. Let's push forward. And we have to do it together. And it's not always going to be easy, and that's good, because if it is always easy, then you're not pushing far enough. You're not digging.
Right, exactly. If you're not, you're not feeling it, then you're not really as engaged. And if it isn't hard, then you're not tackling the difficult things. And that's, I think, where we are. Part of what these conversations are about. This one is a delightful one, so thank you. But these conversations are about, I had a conversation with a UTD president, and the UTD president, United Teachers of Dade, is telling me about her teachers and how difficult it is for these teachers who are now all of a sudden not just teachers, but also homeschoolers, and also trying to deal with all other of problems that their kids have. And looking at the disparities between those who have more privilege than others, more than wealth, parents who actually have a minute to try to get the computer hooked up, as opposed to trying to find out how they're going to pay, to eat, right? So the reason I'm doing these conversations is to record this moment, because you and I have also talked a lot about environmental work, and this pandemic is not going to be the last one. With the global climate change, the climate emergency we're having, the hotter and hotter and hotter record-breaking summers that we have every year, and will continue to have as long as we keep on pumping carbon into the atmosphere, means that the pandemics are going to come closer and faster and in a more contagious way to us, because that's what environmental degradation does. Whether you're polluting Biscayne Bay, or whether you are cutting down a rainforest, you're putting animals in stressful situations where they get sick, and if you're getting rid of their ecosystems, then they're coming into contact with people when they weren't supposed to be, and in a sick and heightened way. And that's how pandemics happen, animal to human transmission. And nothing that we have done so far has stopped it. All we continue to do is put more parts per million in the atmosphere, and we double down on fossil fuel, and we have our heads in the sand. And again, part of that corner I want artists to take us through is to see the connection between climate change and pandemics, and to see how we can find new ways of seeing, but also behaving and governing and living, so that when the next pandemic, and it will, hits the United States, hits Miami, we're better prepared for it. And that's why these conversations matter. Let's see where we are a year from now or two when this pandemic is over. Are we back to business as usual? Are we going to forget about this somehow, like the way people forget about a hurricane until the next thing is tracked? Or are we learning? Are we learning as we go? And again, I think artists are there to show us the way. So yeah, that's why some of the conversations focus so much on that part too, because we also have to talk about that. So you have to balance the hope with this reality that's happening.
Yeah.
Again, let's keep on walking together, huh?
I would love that. And do we get to say that you're going to be on Instagram with your
studio? Oh, please, of course.
I'm so excited for your studio visit. I have to tell you that this, we started this because we were supposed to have Artists Open, which is this county-wide open studio day where all the artists open their studios, and we hosted the first one last year, and it was like, I loved it. And then when it was supposed to be May 9th. So obviously that wasn't going to happen. So these virtual studio visits, I love them because I would never have time to get to go to, to all of these artist studios. And now we get to go into your studio, which I'm so excited about.
Right, so my studio is, as you know, in a botanical garden at Pinecrest Gardens. But for the last 3 months, this is one part of my studio. It's my home office, and my studio is literally, I am painting by talking to you. But I also have a room next door where some of the public art I do gets painted and sketched. So I will be taking, cameras with tripods to do all that. But yeah, I mean, I could. We'll have our conversation about our August 3rd at 3:05.
August 3rd at 3:05.
Be part of that. But, I think it's something, something genuine about saying, yeah, normally you would see me under these conditions, but look, this is where we are. And I think that there's, that there's a truth to that. But I spend most of my art making doing social practice, very much what you and I are doing right now. So let's see how we share that with your audiences too.
Let's keep painting our pictures together.
Oh, well, we're at it here, just so you know. Those I just thought about it right now. Those pieces there here in my home offices are really important to me. The top ones are pieces that I made at the North Pole, literally. I sketched them.
Oh, wow.
And then the ones in the bottom are the ones I made at the South Pole. So just like you're having those moments of, oh my God, up and down, literally these pieces there. And I would get up and bring it to you, but then you get.
Okay, I would need my glasses anyway. So that's why I was like, that's why I was looking around. I was like, where are my glasses so I can see them?
You know that I'm wearing shorts and I'm not wearing slacks. It's not underwear, but it's kind of fun.
Do you have shoes on?
And no, I have, are you kidding? I haven't seen shoelaces in months.
Okay, I'm a bare feet.
So,
favorite way to be.
So my point is that so you'll see some of my work, and the first painting I ever did is over there, St. Paul.
Oh, great!
So little things like that here at home, but it's not that studio experience, which I think, which I'm so grateful that you are doing. That you're inviting your audiences to come see artist studios at this point. I think that's really spectacular. So thanks.
Yeah, but the studio is where you are. So this is, like you said, this is
my studio.
This is your studio. So don't say you're not inviting.
No, you're in my home. You are in my workplace. You are in my studio. Absolutely. Exactly. You're just not in other studios I have in a gorgeous botanical garden. But hey,
we can do that later.
We can do that later. Hey, this is so nice.
Thanks so much. I'm sending a big heart. Big love.
Absolutely.
Virtual hugs.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Stay safe and keep on fighting. I so appreciate what you do.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you.